everyone. Thanks for listening today. And this is number 5 of Fay and Tom's Divorce Coaching Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the little bit in between Christmas and New Year. It may be that you decide to separate from your partner. You may decide that actually your marriage is over. It can be a really, really pivotal time, especially if you've got family round and in-laws that you're entertaining, keeping the kids happy, worrying about how much money you spent on Christmas presents. It can be a time where you actually sit back and think, am I happy? And it actually can be a time where literally it's the last straw that broke the camel's back. What's your experience, Tom, of kind of your last Christmas when you were married before your marriage broke down?
Yeah, I know we were talking about this before, but excuse me, sorry, forgive me for it. Don't know if you can edit that out. Oh well, never mind. Yeah, mine was very different to yours, and I will come to yours in a minute, obviously. But for me, I was starting to think about mine in around about the October, maybe November, that I really started to. Well, but before that, I kind of knew. I knew that for quite a while before. I think it's around the October, November that it was starting to really think about. Well, what do I do? Do I do we end the relationship? Do we not? Do we try and work at it? Do we not? Etc. So it's going into that Christmas period for me, and we actually separated in March the following year. So I suppose that's kind of like a 6-month period there, isn't it? Where like it's kind of constantly on the mind and what you're thinking about, and like you say, you're doing all these other things, like you're spending a fortune, like that's what we all do anyway, like on Christmas dinner and presents, and you're organizing who you're going to see and where you're going to go and who's round, etc., and all of that. In fact, I actually also distinctly remember, I think it was shortly after, New Year, because I'm pretty sure it was around the January, we were actually, my ex wanted to be booking a holiday for the summer, because of course, like a lot of people again after Christmas, you start thinking about, and obviously getting all the adverts of what you're going to do in the summer, and you've got something to look forward to. So I remember my ex talking to us about booking a holiday, and I was trying to put it off and trying to put it off and trying to put it off. And I actually remember I think it was mid to late January, might have even been early February, that she said, oh, well, I've just found one now. So she was going to go ahead and book it. And I'm like in this kind of torn situation of like, I don't want to, I suppose in some respects, maybe I wasn't brave enough yet. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
In all honesty. And I didn't know how to approach this conversation. I didn't know what to say, didn't know what not to say. I was still just a huge muddle and trying to figure it all out in my own mind. So I ended up booking the holiday and spending a good couple of grand and like 2 weeks away in Corfu, whatever it was, only knowing that obviously we were going to be potentially separating soon, and we subsequently did in the March. So mine was, it was very tumultuous time. You've got a lot of conflict going on, and you're questioning yourself, and you're trying to figure out like, what do you want, where do you want to be, what do you want to do. And it's a really challenging time, especially when it's supposed to be a nice, happy family time and things like that. And then actually you kind of start beating yourself up a bit as well, because maybe you're not enjoying it as much because you've got all this other stuff going on, and you're then not necessarily really present and not really in the moment and enjoying it, because you've got all this other stuff going on, clouding your thoughts and judgments and decisions and thought processes. So it can be a huge stressor on your well-being and your mindset and your perspective, and even just your ability to actually just kind of try and enjoy that time as well. I know yours was very different to mine, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I totally get you. Christmas and New Year, it's very much family centered, and I suppose if you're thinking about kind of leaving your marriage or ending your relationship, you probably don't want to do it because it's Christmas and you want your kids to be happy. So I can, I can see it from both sides of the coin, that actually you don't want to say the words you want to say just yet, because of the fact that, it's for the kids, and you want to make sure that the kids have a nice time. And I totally get that. And, it's strange you mentioned about holidays, Tom, because I was actually due to fly out with my ex and my family literally the day after Boxing Day. It was very much a tradition. We get Christmas out of the way, and then we go on a nice holiday before the kids went back to school. Right. So we got that booked, and I had a feeling that my husband at that time wasn't happy. But it was literally on Christmas Day, I think he was doing something with the turkey we'd got. both our mums coming round, my dad, you know, we got quite a few people, as was usually the case for my Christmases when I was married. And he turned around and said that he wasn't happy, that there was no way he was going to spend another Christmas like this. Literally, I didn't know what to say. I was totally in a state of shock, thinking I knew he wasn't happy, but he'd not really said anything.
Yeah.
So for him to turn around and say that to me on Christmas Day when we got people coming around, it was quite difficult, because it was very much, he shut down after that, and he literally said, I don't want to come on holiday now.
No.
So I had to get through Christmas, I suppose, playing happy families for my kids and everyone that was coming round, pretending that nothing had happened when he'd said that morning. So it can be very, very stressful. I think adrenaline gets you through. And it was funny because he did end up coming on the holiday because it was all booked. And I suppose it was a case of, do you know what, we've got my daughter and our child together going. And I suppose for him, he didn't want to let his son down. So we all ended up going on holiday. And that's when I found out about his affair. So it was all kind of sort of tangled up in Christmas and New Year, the whole thing. So, you know, I understand very much the pressure that everybody's under at Christmas, and you can understand why people leave it until the new year as well. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, we were saying before, weren't we, about that it's the first Monday after the new year. It's kind of divorce day for solicitors, as people are starting to reevaluate things. New year, new me, and all those types of things. But yeah, I suppose one thing that I noticed from your story, and I'm now reflecting back and remembering on mine, is how scary it is to start that conversation. And I know a lot of people maybe watching this won't agree with me, but I think for some degree it does take, as hard and as horrible as it can be for the other party and for both of you, to be fair, it does take an element of kind of courage and bravery to bring that, to actually start saying those things, because it's that stuff that's been building up for so long, that impacts people in so many different ways. I mean, people that have watched the other podcast know that we was talking the other week, weren't we, about panic attacks. And I had a panic attack at work because there's all this stuff going on that I'm not getting out, and it just came out somewhere else when my body's shutting down. And like you said with your husband, it was Christmas Day, where he says, I'm not doing another Christmas like this, because he's just at that point, he doesn't know how to get it out anymore. It just comes out. And then, so I completely get from the one side of the situation, where even when you've been building up to this and thinking that this is a conversation you've got to have, like how hard that is, even in the most amicable of situations. Even when I've spoken with clients before, they said, "Oh, it's quite amicable. We're actually from the get-go, it's been quite good." And even then, it still takes one of the parties to bring up the situation, to bring up that question or bring up that discussion, to say this isn't working. However they go about it, even if the other party goes, "No, I completely agree," it still took one of you to bring up that discussion, which takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage in the first instance. So now I really get how it can kind of build up and then just come out at a particular time. I know mine wasn't around Christmas, mine was in the March, but not too dissimilar to your situation, actually. I got home from work. My wife had, in all fairness to her, bless her, she had made us my favourite dinner. And I got home, and I'd already decided that day that was going to be the day I had the conversation. What I didn't know was that I was going to be coming home to a candlelit dinner for two, and the boys would be in bed.
Okay.
And we sat through dinner, and after dinner, I was doing the washing up at the sink. Bearing in mind it was a new build house with a brand new dishwasher. I'd never washed up in my life. I'd always used a dishwasher, so something was clearly up. And I remember her saying, "What's wrong?" And like your husband, there was a situation. I don't know what it was. It was more, I suppose, this kind of my opportunity. This was my chance to say something, and not too dissimilar to your husband. I just said, this isn't working anymore. I'm not happy. All right, it wasn't at Christmas, but it was still after a meal and a romantic meal and things like that. So it's it can be a really difficult time. And like we said, there's never any good time to have this discussion. But in doing what we do, helping people, is how you can approach it in the best way. Because there's always going to be Christmas, someone's birthday, an anniversary, Valentine's Day, summer holidays, Easter, anniversaries. there will always be something that's just around the corner. So for me, it's more around when I'm working with clients, and I suspect you're the same, Faye, that it's actually more around how you get people to approach that, so that it isn't just an instant kind of out of the blue sledgehammer to you, as it was, or as it probably was to my ex-wife, and about how it's still always going to be a hard discussion and a horrible thing to hear, but about how you can approach it in the best way, and the most respectful way, and the most honest way.
Definitely, you know, we have had this discussion about when is the right time, and you know, you can always make an excuse of not today because of this and not today because of this. So you're right there never is a good time. And your situation reminds me of my first marriage breakdown, because I'd done the whole cooking a nice dinner. I was off work at the time because my daughter, she was not even one, so I'd taken a year's maternity leave. You know, my husband came back, done what he usually does. We sat down and ate, and I asked him a very run-of-the-mill question: what do you want tomorrow night? And he literally turned around and said, I can't do this anymore, I've got to go. And he literally walked out of the door. It was as quick as that. So, you know, that reminds me of your first experience, of your experience of actually saying that. And I was stunned. I was literally reeling again, thinking, what is going on? And I think for me, and I think a lot of people that hear that from their partners or spouses, I went into a big denial phase. Yep. I pushed it all down and pretended that actually it wasn't happening, that actually I could salvage it. And that's a really not a nice place to be, because carrying on as if nothing's happened, and actually it is going to happen, you're just denying yourself that kind of that healing process.
Yeah.
I think for me, my survival instinct kicked in, and I didn't want to acknowledge that my first marriage was over, and then my second marriage was over.
Yeah.
So that's quite a big thing to get over, I think, for people that didn't know, or maybe had an inkling, but actually hearing it is totally different.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think if people are starting to have those thoughts or thinking about that as well, again, like I know we kind of say this all the time, and it might not necessarily be me or you, it could be somebody else. If we're not the right coach for you, we'll gladly point you in the right direction of someone that isn't, if we're not right for you. But seeking some support and some input externally from a divorce coach can really help you kind of work through that process and get yourself in a congruent situation from a mindset perspective, so that you can approach this in the best way possible. If you are thinking about in between Christmas and New Year, in the new year, etc., how you can go about doing this, not necessarily the when, but how you can approach this, and really how you're thinking about ending it as well. So it's really important to kind of seek out that support and that input from people.
I'm going to ask you, Tom, quite a big question. And, you know, when you said that to your wife at that time, how did you support? Obviously, she would have been quite upset. How was your relationship after you telling her? Were you there to kind of help pick the pieces up, or was it very much she didn't want to let you in anymore?
What, immediately, like that in the moment?
Well, immediately, and maybe, you know, a week down the line when things had calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, immediately in the moment, I think we had a long talk for a couple of hours, and then I distinctly remember her saying that she wanted her sister to come round and she wanted support. Cool, that's fine, of course, completely get that. She lived up the road, so she was around pretty quick. Her sister came round, and I remember actually saying, look, I'm going to go sit upstairs in the spare room, be out of the way. We had decent enough size house. In fact, our spare room had its own ensuite. So my original thought process was that she could stay in what was our room, and I could stay in the spare room because I still had my bathroom, and the boys still got their rooms. And I remember her saying, like, I'd just like some time with my sister. Would you mind leaving and going going out for a bit? And I always, categorically to the day I remember this, saying to both her and her sister at the time, who wasn't angry, like, who wasn't shouting, there's a lot of obviously tears and ups there. I remember saying to both my ex and her sister, I remember saying to them, look, I'm not leaving, I'm going out to get a pint of milk. I am coming back. I'm not leaving the family home, I'm just going out to get a pint of milk, sort of thing. normal mundane kind of routine thing.
Yeah.
They both said, yeah. I said, like, so when I come back, I'll come in, just call me or text me when you guys are okay, and I could, and I'll pop back. And I was actually just going for a drive or whatever. So I did. I went out for a drive, and it was about, I think it was within about half an hour, I had a text message from her brother saying, "You've vacated the family home. We've contacted a solicitor. Blah 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 blah."
Okay.
Bearing in mind this is like 10 o'clock at night, and there's now a state of execution. You're not allowed in the house for at least 48 hours. So I wasn't able to go and get any stuff. I wasn't able to see my boys or talk to them or anything, and the whole thing kind of just went into its own version of lockdown, really.
Okay.
So that was really horrible. That was really hard. And then it was a couple of days later, it was like 2 days later, probably would have been the Sunday, I suppose, whenever it was, a couple of days later, through communication via my sister had got in contact with her sister, and we arranged to meet so I could see the boys.
Yeah.
And it was my ex and her sister, me and my sister, and she obviously brought the boys along, and I got to play with the boys and see the boys for a bit, at like a Harvester type restaurant, and we sat and tried to talk, and it was obviously still really, really hard then for everybody. So yeah, it was quite some time, to be honest with you, until things started calming down.
Yeah.
In all honesty, hand on heart, it was actually only really after I had been through my coaching training and my NLP and all the rest of it, when I started to recognise the bits that I could control, how I could approach things differently, what I brought to the table, how I could approach things and communicate with her in a better way, and rather than kind of keep trying to fight fire with fire, I suppose in some respects killing her with kindness, if you like. But also with genuineness, because whilst I may not have been the world's most ideal husband in the latter stages of our marriage, I was always a 100% committed father, and always will be, and I never wanted to be away from my boys. And it was, whilst our relationship had ended, the relationship with my sons never will. So it was imperative to me that I built a relationship with her so that I can keep the relationship with my children.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we can all look back, and me included, you know, when we get to this place where we are now, Tom, and we're doing what we do, we have that self-awareness. We can look back and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I can do a lot of that and not feel any emotion. And I think it's easier said than done for us to sit here and say, well, you know, this maybe is what you should do. But when you're in the thick of it, you know, we both know those emotions can take over.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, isn't it? And I think, you know, if you can get to that place and look back and think, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I can count on two hands things that I did that maybe I shouldn't have done. Nothing major. I didn't, you know, go around cutting clothes up or you know, getting my keys on my ex's cars or anything. Nothing like that. But there were certain things that I said or did that didn't help my well-being, that maybe I should not have done. And I think for me, I should have sought help sooner. I did have somebody in my support bubble. I think that's really important. If you're the person whose partner or spouse is saying, look, I think, you know, we're over, we need to talk about it. If you're on the receiving end of that, it is really important to have someone that is going to be in your support bubble. And obviously your ex had her sister. And it's really important that, you know, you accept it as well. I was very much, I don't need any help. I can do this on my own. And I didn't really even want to tell anybody because I was in that denial. I thought, well, it'll blow over in a few months. And obviously it never did. So, you know, getting that support early on is really, really important.
I think that's really important for both sides. Because I think one of the things that, and I've said this to you, I know quite a few times in just like our own one-to-ones. One of my kind of reasons of coming into coaching was to help also demystify this perception that the person that chooses to end a relationship just rides off into the sunset on a unicorn and everything's fine and lovely for them. And of course, sometimes it's going to look like that. But there's also a lot of other things that they'll be dealing with their own self-resentment, their own self-hatred, guilt, feelings of shame, etc. All these types of things that they're going to go through, not necessarily because they feel they've made a mistake or want to be back with their former partner, but just about how they've maybe approached that situation, the feelings that they've created for somebody else and creating that pain and that hurt. And it's not a nice feeling. No one does that because they want to do it. So yeah, it is all about how you move forward from there. So my support bubble was my sister, one of my brothers, and my parents as well, was my kind of support bubble. But again, it was my support bubble were very much that. They were a support bubble, but they weren't a do this, do that, here's some advice, this is what I would do, etc. It was more a bit like coaching, really. It's more around what are your options, what do you want to do, how do you want to approach this. And I think it was kind of that kind of really made me start to think about how to approach things differently. And then obviously training more in coaching that really brought that out. And what I could really do, what I'm responsible for and could be accountable for. But I think that's the other key thing, isn't it? When you're getting the right support bubble around you, not necessarily the ones that are saying, take the house, take the kids, take the car, etc., all that sort of thing, because that doesn't actually serve the kids positively, or either one of you, because whilst you might feel like you've got everything, you're still going to be left with that void and that emptiness, regardless of whether you get everything, and it looks like you've won. You're still going to have that void. You're still going to have that feeling there. So actually, what it's about is doing it in the right way. So yeah, it's that's kind of where we come in, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we're all going to have you and people listening to this. You're all going to have friends and family who are going to tell you what they think you should do. That's human nature. They're going to say, look, get the solicitors in, get financial advice, you know, lock them out, change all of this. And they are, again, they're wanting the best for you because they're hurting for you.
Yeah, of course.
And it's nice to know that you've got people in your bubble like that. But again, it's being able to think to yourself, well, maybe that isn't the right thing to do. And when your emotions are heightened, it's going to be clouded as well. You know, your head's going to be spinning. You'll feel as if you're crashing and burning. So it's lovely that, you know, people are going to be able to tell you what they think you should do, but you've got to sit back and think, is this the right thing to do? Is this going to serve my mental health? Is this going to be the right thing for my children?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always say with people, well, how do you want that situation to be when you've finished going through the solicitors, you've finalised a divorce, whether you go through court and all the rest of it, how do you want it to be for the children after? So 2 homes as opposed to 2 houses. So when they do go and spend their time with the other parent, whether that's mum or dad, and whether that is 50-50 or if it's every other weekend or one night a month, whatever variation it is, how do you want that to be for them? How do you want that experience to be for them? Do you want it to be in some beds sit on the wrong side of town where they don't have their own room and their own stuff, and one parent looks like they're really struggling? Or do you want to still be able to work towards being able to create a safe and supportive home in both sides? And I'm not talking about whether the size of the house or anything like that, but I'm just talking about the environment that they're going to be in, and that you can actually both do this in the right way, and to support each other. I think one of the other things that really helped, I know it helps me and my ex, I know it helps my partner and her ex, is we all, and actually between the 4 of us, we all still have kind of like a united front in our parenting. Of course, there are different boundaries maybe and slightly different rules within the different houses, but we still kind of have a foundational level of things, and we also support each other with that as well still. So when I see like the boys ignoring their mum because she's told them to put the shoes on for the 15th time when I'm there to pick them up, and it's about reminding them as well, it's not about that just because we're not together that we don't like each other and we can't get on or we hate each other. And I'll still say, I'm like, boys, listen to your mum, stop being rude, put your shoes on, say sorry to your mum. Like, and same thing that I would do if we were still together. Like, listen to your mum, don't disrespect your mum. And we still do that and create that united front. And that helps both of us with our parenting. And it also helps keep the boundaries for the kids, because they do need to know those boundaries. All right, they know they're going to test them, they're going to push them, but they still like to know that those guidelines and rules are there.
Yeah, definitely. Strangely enough, after this call, I've got my son's over Zoom parents consultation this evening, which his dad will be hopping onto as well. So those sorts of things, you know, it's good to show that united front. It's good to go, and see the nativity play if there is one, or go to meetings at school together, because actually, you know, you're sharing your children. That's a really hard thing to do. I think, you know, we need to mention that, because sharing your children for the first time when you've had them together as a couple, and then having to break away and share them, that's one of the hardest things you will do as a parent. And it, you know, it's a feat to get over that.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is. It's also, funny enough, I always kind of look at it as it is one of the hardest, but I think it's also potentially one of the most rewarding when you do it in the right way. The amount of parents that I speak to that don't want to kind of relinquish that control, and they is all the time. So when they actually start to regain some of their own purpose, some of their, like, follow their own passions, focus on their own work, new relationships, whatever it is, a hobby, and they start to get a bit of their time back, a bit of me time. Like me, I always actually say I'm a much better parent as a part-time parent than I was a full-time parent. I'm much more present. I'm much more engaged. I know exactly where I am and what I'm doing and what's going on. And in actual fact, because I get some of my time back, and that sounds really selfish, but again, when you're going through a situation, you have to be a little bit selfish to a degree, not completely, but to a degree. You've got to get back to focusing on you and creating the best version of you, so you can be the best version of you for your children, and to work through this process.
I'm totally with you there. You know, when I haven't got my kids, I'm the most selfish person out there. You know, I get quite excited thinking, oh my gosh, I've got a few days without the kids. Wonderful. You know, I can fill up my well-being battery. And it allows you then to, when you have got your kids, to be the best parent that you can be.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're all superhuman and we're wonderful parents, and I'm certainly not. But I know that when I've had that time to myself, to have fun, to meet up with my friends, to do things with my partner, to do my yoga, my walking, when I get my kids back, I'm ready for them. I've missed them. They get a big hug. You know, I cook their favourite things for tea. I know for the rest of the week, I'm going to give them the best parent that I can. And yes, of course, when you've got them, you're not selfish. You put them at the top, knowing that actually it won't be long again before they go back to the other parent and the whole thing starts again. You get that time again. So I love it now. I did struggle, I'm not going to lie, Tom, to share my children. And it was very much, I didn't want my marriages to fail. I was very much, I didn't ask for this. So actually, I don't want to share my children. And I found it really difficult. And I had to, when I didn't have them, I had to make sure that I was busy all day so that I wasn't sat at home twiddling my thumbs, you know, getting upset or lonely or going over things. And you will find that, you know, if you're in that position, it does get better. Because like you say, you find your passions, you start to be happy again, you start to have fun, and you think, wow, this isn't bad.
And the thing is, when you start to break that cycle as well, when you start to change things, and it's like anything, even take another kind of example, it's like going to the gym. When you get into that cycle and you go running, whatever it might be, yoga, like you said, whatever it is that you're interested in, when you start doing it and you get more engaged with it, you get to enjoy it more, and you start to find more kind of purpose around it. So it's also really important as well for anybody that's watching this thinking, well, I'd love to be there, but I can't. You can. Everybody can. It's just knowing how. And again, that's where kind of coaching really comes into play, to help you break down those limiting beliefs, help you change that pattern, and actually start implementing. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to yourself and what you action, and what you want to change. Nothing's going to change unless you make it change. So again, you don't think that you can find a purpose, or you don't want to enjoy this time. Well, why don't you challenge yourself and see what you can enjoy, and what you can find for you, what you can really get back to, or new passions. Did you have any kind of tips around how you did move past that?
I did actually. Yeah, you know, I've kind of written some tips down. If you're in that position between Christmas and New Year where you've been told by your partner that maybe your marriage is over, or you're having thoughts yourselves, you know, my tips would be, you know, within that time, especially if you've got family around, because I know the lockdown restrictions are easing for that time, isn't it, over Christmas and New Year. So most of you will be having in-laws around, and extended family. And I've sort of written down, try not to get into too many heated discussions that would turn to arguments. I know that's really hard, because, you know, both you and your partner, you'll know which buttons to press. You'll know each other well enough to know which button to press to gain a reaction. And, you know, my top tip is try not to get into those sorts of conversations. You know, take yourself out of it if you need to, because it's Christmas, because you are there with the children and your family. It's just making sure that it runs as smoothly as it can. And also have some time to yourself. If you need to take yourself out for a walk or go up to your bedroom, do that, because you're going to need processing time. You know, if you decided, you know, my marriage isn't working, I need to tell my spouse, or you've been given that bombshell, you're going to need that time on your own, just to sit and just be and to process and you know, maybe shed a few tears. And you don't want to be doing that in front of family while you're sitting watching, I don't know, the Queen's speech or Morecambe and Wise or whatever's on this Christmas. I'm not sure yet, I've not looked. And also I put to start planning. It's certainly true, you know, to engage yourself, to push yourself. It isn't easy to get yourself out, you know, to get yourself from the beginning to the end. It's not an easy path. It's certainly not a straight path. And it takes courage, and it takes bravery, and it takes determination. You can be sitting and making a mental plan. How am I going to move myself forward? What do I need to do? Yeah.
Yeah. And likewise, if you're the party that's actually has or is about to broach this situation, one of the biggest things I always work with quite early on with people is making sure that they're communicating from a place of empathy as opposed to ego. Remembering that whilst this is really difficult and you are being brave and having the courage to say that this isn't working and to point out maybe the elephant in the room or the elephant of the relationship, if you like, but also remembering how this is for the other party. You've had time to think about this and process this and effectively come to this decision, and you're making the other person's decision for them. So just make sure that you're coming from a place of empathy as opposed to ego, how you're approaching the situation. Expect that it's going to be difficult, that it is going to be challenging, but what can you do to support that in the right way? How can you help the other party to maybe set some boundaries as well around some of the conversations that are going to need to be had, but could maybe wait for a little while immediately whilst the initial news settles in? But what can you also do, like I say, is to be a support resource positively, whether that is they need a bit of time and space and you can have the children for a couple of hours or whatever it might be. But how can you approach this in the right way? Because it is going to be a difficult time.
Definitely. And you know, I think empathy is something that's difficult to do, and it's sometimes you can either show empathy or you find it difficult, and you have to learn it. And also respect. You know, you may have been married a really long time, and you know, your partner, regardless of who's making the decision or what choices are made, you still need to respect each other. That's hard, and I wish you know, looking back for both my experiences, I wish I would have had slightly more respect than I did. But I think it's something, you know, don't lose sight of that. You know, if you're watching this and thinking, I don't think I can, you can. Even if you don't do everything completely right or perfect, nobody's perfect. You're going to say things that you wish you hadn't said. You're going to do things that you wish you hadn't done. But try and put that empathy and that respect at the top.
The other two things to try and keep away from that I always advise people is try to avoid revenge and acts of punishment, because these things are also, even if you're the aggrieved party here, and I get it, like your whole world has just crashed around you, you're angry and you're scared and you're sad and a whole multitude of other things, but you're only going to actually resent and question yourself later on through things that maybe, like you said yourself earlier, Faye, things that you thought, God, I wish I'd done that differently, or I wish I hadn't done that, and it will come back, and it will play on your mind. It's those sort of things that come back. So avoiding anything where it comes to revenge or punishing the other party, because actually you're only punishing yourself. You try and act out on things like that. So again, it's just around how to do this in the right way, and it can be done. Myself and Faye and our clients are kind of perfect examples of that, and there are plenty more out there as well, and you too can be one of them if you choose to.
Definitely. Definitely. I think, I don't know whether you feel the same, Tom. One of the hardest coaching jobs that I have is when clients come in, and I've actually got a couple in this position this week coming in where one doesn't want to leave the marriage, but one does, having those conflicting opinions and emotion. And that as coaches is really, really hard, because you're dealing with two people who want different things, and you're dealing with the hurt and the anger and the upset. And, and that is in essence our role, to smooth the path, isn't it, Tom? To give the couple that safe and confidential space to have these really difficult conversations, and us as the experts are just there to facilitate those conversations and to help you make the right choices for you both, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
I think that's
so
all.
We've covered quite a bit, Tom, haven't we, today?
We did, yeah. We covered a lot more than I thought we were going to cover. So yeah, I suppose on closing, then our points are, as always, if you are stuck, if you don't know what to do, if you're feeling a bit lost, you're a bit confused, you're conflicted, or even if you're none of those things, but there's something else going on for you, and you want to gain a bit of clarity, and you want some input and some a place to bounce those ideas around and figure out what's going to be best for you and for your situation, get in touch with Fay or get in touch with myself. As always, we both offer a free discovery consultation call for you to establish if either one of us are right for you, or potentially both. We haven't done that yet. But do get in touch. All of our contact info and socials, etc., will all be coming up at the end of the clip. But get in touch if you want to find out any more. And likewise, if you've got any questions, comments, or any topics that you want us to talk about, send us a message, put it in the comments, and get in touch.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Tom. Is it too early, though, to mention our little competition that we've been hatching for the new year?
No, go for it.
Oh, so me and Tom have decided that in New Year for January, that we are going to be giving away a coaching session for free with either one of us as both together for one of you very lucky listeners. We've not exactly decided yet how you can win, but we will let you know. We kind of talked about it, didn't we, Tom? We kind of got to the stage of talking
we got
about
the
it.
idea. We just didn't know how we were going to choose.
Yes.
But we'll figure that out next week by the time we get there.
But I think it will be along the lines of some listeners' participation, either a message or you tell us your story, tell us what you're struggling with. It could be along that line. So be ready to send us an email or a message, I think. But hopefully on the next podcast, we will have all the information ready.
We'll make sure we have it, and we'll give it at the beginning of the next podcast as well.
Yes, definitely.
Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.